I hope you are having an amazing day. Today, I have a fantastic guest, the awesome Michelle Vroom. Michelle has made $500,000 from her Facebook group and counting. When she says she knows how to grow an audience that makes six figures, she means it. Hello, practice what you preach. Integrity, people. This is so good. Growing her own group was a total game changer for her own business. It gave her the freedom and security she had been searching for when she left her 9 to 5 nearly 5 years ago. We're going to talk all about that journey today. And with a 15-year background in marketing and public relations, Michelle has the skills and knowledge to help other talented rock stars get to six figures in their business. That starts with a proven framework for growing an engaged Facebook group that makes you a six-figure business owner. Michelle's no-nonsense, tough love approach, sounds familiar, helps her clients get results fast. If you want a kick in the pants to get moving and the accountability to go with it, then Michelle is the perfect coach for you. Today, we're also going to dive into being more confident, showing up, finding your ideal client, and then landing those clients to hit that six-figure goal. So tune in.
You're listening to Free Mama Radio, where we believe you can have both a successful business and show up as the mom you want to be. I'm your host, Lauren Golden, a mom who built a full-time income working part-time hours. Now, I help other moms like you learn how to work from home on your own terms, take control of your schedule, and make more money so you can live a totally awesome, guilt-free life. I am on a mission to make sure that no mother has to choose between family and financial stability. So if you've been wondering, can I really have it all? This podcast will give you the answers.
You guys, thank you so much for joining us. I have the outstanding Michelle Vroom here with me today. It's so funny. She started as someone who I recognized as like a teeny little circle on Facebook. She was inside my community. I kept seeing her name pop up over and over again, which
we know we have so many connections.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that today because showing up in groups to the point that other people see you and start to recognize you and you're like building a reputation for yourself is kind of what both of us teach, like, or a part of what we teach in terms of building your business and building your brand. So this is going to be super duper fun today. Michelle, welcome. Welcome to Free Mama Radio.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you for having me. This is a great follow-up conversation. I had Lauren on my podcast. When was it? Like a month or so ago?
Yeah. I know. So we got to go deep on my side, and today we get to go deep on your side. So let's just go ahead and dive in and provide some inspiration to everybody today. Tell us a little bit. Let's start with the present. Like, I teach something in my community called a power pitch. It's like the one sentence, like, what do you do kind of thing. You don't have to limit it to one sentence, but for people who aren't familiar with you, they don't know your little circle from inside the Facebook group yet.
Yes.
Who are you? What do you do?
Yes, I am a marketing coach and I help female solopreneurs, just like those of you watching, grow a six-figure business. And I do it primarily by helping you create a community of your own online so that you can get consistent clients. It's all about bringing in those consistent clients. I truly believe that, to me, my definition of freedom is you being able to land clients whenever you want. And for those of you watching, like maybe that sounds like a pipe dream, or it sounds like something that is never going to happen, right? It absolutely is possible and it absolutely can happen for you. And I'm really passionate about that because you are talented. You have unique expertise that no one else has. And it does no one any good if you don't get it out there. So that's why I'm so excited to be here and to talk about, showing up, getting clients, putting yourself out there, getting visible, and where confidence plays a role in all of that too. That was more than one sentence, but
I love it because you said, like, I'm really passionate about this. And I'm like, yeah, I see that. I feel that. And I know when I talk about what I do, like, I get all worked up because I care and I can tell that you care about the clients that you serve as well. What got you to this point? Were you always destined for entrepreneurship? Did you know that you were going to start your own business? Obviously at the Free Mama, like, motherhood played a big part in my business, and you are also a mom. So kind of tell me, how did we get where we are today, and how does motherhood play a role in that journey?
Absolutely. Motherhood triggered the entire thing, but the dream was there before. And I imagine that a lot of people can probably relate to that. I think sometimes, I used to think, well, the only reason I started a business was because I became a mom, but that's actually not true. I always had a little bit of that, entrepreneurial bug, if you will. I actually come from a family of entrepreneurs. Fun fact, my great grandfather built an apple cider company during the Great Depression. Like, he would go door to door selling cider to people. And that's how he built the company. And so I've always kind of seen, entrepreneurs in my family, my dad, running the company and being very involved. And so it was definitely something that I think is probably in my blood. But I also knew that I wanted to have that freedom, right? I mean, we can all relate, like wanting that freedom as an entrepreneur. I just thought that it would be like way later in life. Like I used to say, oh, it'll be like when I'm in my 50s and the kids are grown. And I didn't even have kids at the time. So it was like a total just about, and now I'm like laughing because I'm 35. And so I'm like, well, gosh, if I had, stuck with that time frame, I'd be 15 years still out, of starting it. But I always had that vision and that belief, right? And I think that's important. And I think all of you can relate to that. And then what happened is I, had a great corporate job. Like nothing was wrong with my job before. It wasn't like I hated my job and I had to get out. But I was commuting in and out of Philadelphia. I live in the Philadelphia suburbs. And so was my husband. And when we got pregnant with our first child, everything changed. And I don't even think I need to go into what that means because of our audience here, right? Everything changed. And suddenly it was like, you know what? I don't want to keep doing this, right? Even though I have a great job, great manager, great team, I don't want to keep doing this. I want something different. And my son, I've got 3 sons. My son, my oldest, who's 5.5 now. So like I've been in business for 5 years, watching him grow and watching the business grow. He just kind of initiated that. And it's just so happened, and I believe all things work out the way they're supposed to. I'm a big believer in God, and I think he definitely brought some opportunities my way. While I was on maternity leave with my son, I had people coming to me, like family, friends, people in my referral network. We'll talk more about that later. Coming to me saying, hey, like, we need help with social media. That was kind of the starting point. And so I actually started getting some clients while I was on maternity leave. And it got to a point where I said to myself, you have a decision to make. You either wait on this dream or you take advantage of it now, even though it was very, very scary. Like I was the breadwinner at the time. So it involved a huge financial sacrifice for me to go out on my own. I went back to work like for maybe 2 months. And then I went out on my own and started my business. And it was an interesting journey. It's been an interesting journey, but I have to say, like, taking that leap of faith, looking back, I'm like, that was the best decision you could have ever made. Like, there's no way I could have kept waiting, to do that, or I would have probably gone insane trying to manage everything. So that's kind of like my story in a nutshell. And then since then, my business has evolved. I didn't start out doing coaching. I didn't start out doing the things that I was doing now. I kind of had to figure it out as I went along the way. There was no perfect rule book or guidebook. And I think that's important to know too. And I messed up and fell down a lot too.
And we talked about that.
I'm talking about that.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about it now. We talked about it kind of before we started. We went live. Michelle and I were talking about how there's a lack of transparency in the online, both kind of internet marketing space, but also the coaching world and just influencers in general, where it's kind of through these like rose colored sunglasses. And it's like, even some people who are talking about mistakes and failure, they're not really getting to the heat of it. And like these things.
Yeah. I sent out an email with the wrong subject line or something. Like, guys, I'm talking like big failure, like big.
Although, funny story, I did once accidentally send an email that was supposed to go to like 200 people to like 100,000 people. And
there you go.
Like a really big mistake.
That's a big mistake. I was definitely like teasing about that, but I mean, there are like big mistakes that happen. And I do think that you're right. A lot of people don't talk about that.
So let's talk about it. What have some of those things been for you, and how has that helped you evolve, both in terms of like what you offer in your business, but also how have those equip you as a business owner? Because from where I sit in the free mama world, a lot of people don't even start because they're afraid of those failures. And I think from where Michelle and I sit today, with lots of bruises and scratches and also lots of success and more freedom, there's both. I know for me personally, my relationship with failure is so much different. This thing that used to be really scary is now the thing I learned the most from. And for sometimes it's modeling and sometimes it's like my own biggest takeaway. Like I actually have a lot of appreciation for those mistakes and failure now. So what are some of those defining moments for you for the last 5 years?
Yeah. I love, by the way, that you couch it as a relationship with failure, because it is a relationship, right? And it can be a difficult relationship, but it's also a relationship that teaches you so much and makes you stronger. I always say it's like running a marathon. So before I had my first child, I ran a marathon, my one and only marathon, in Disney World. And I remember being like I had to train for a year to get there. Like there was so many analogies that you could make, right? And connections between that and business. And so I always say it's like failure strengthens your business endurance, right? It's not necessarily physical, though you certainly feel the physical effects, right? But it's more so your mental endurance. And so for me, like I've always struggled with failure in the sense of how I define it and how I define that relationship. I'm your typical type A oldest child who blazed the trail for everybody else and never felt like I could fail or let anybody down. And so I had to start getting comfortable with it. And it was very difficult. In the first year of business alone, so many big mistakes. Just to rattle off some, taking on clients that I had no business taking on clients without any agreement or contract, and just being completely amenable to whatever they decided. I actually lost 3 clients in one day in my first year of business, and partly due to that. So like massive, massive failures.
And
Clients,
what's so beautiful about that one though, Michelle, is like when things like that are devastating happen, talk about your greatest teacher. Like I'm willing to bet that low of lows, and I can only imagine that you were like curled up in bed crying.
well, it was 2 months before I was to give birth with my second child. So it's not like I could backfill that, right? And like fill in all that. No, it was a huge blow. Yeah.
Did you ever make those exact same mistakes again?
Never did.
Never.
Yeah. Never did.
Like when we have these little like cushion falls of a failure, it's like we tend to make those mistakes over again, but it's like these big gut wrenching ones. It's like you learn and you will never let that happen again, right?
Never. And it actually freed up my time to be able to serve people that I loved and like get clear about who I wanted to serve. I know we'll be talking about ideal client as well. So that was, that served me in a lot of ways, but it didn't mean it wasn't incredibly, incredibly painful. I mean, there's been a lot of like client related mistakes, I think, because when you become an entrepreneur and you're service based, like you are suddenly dealing with a lot of different people. And that's really challenging. Like we're complex, right? We're complex. Relationships are complex. So definitely clients that have been unhappy, right? That's come up. I think that's important to admit, because I think people see certain entrepreneurs and they think, well, everything goes perfectly. All your clients are happy. Everybody loves your programs. Everybody loves everything. No. That's just not the way it happens. In fact, as you grow and get access to more people, some of that stuff can become more challenging. Going live, right? Like I remember going live and I used to have like interruptions from my children. Like my one son, I was doing like a really important live. He came in with like a box of Ritz crackers and interrupted the whole thing. And I felt completely mortified, only to find out later people loved it. They thought it was so approachable. But at the time I didn't know that. I was coming from corporate. So at corporate, everything was buttoned up. You didn't talk about your personal life. You didn't get into it. So I actually felt like for a little while, almost like I couldn't really show like me as a mom. Like I would hide the fact that I had a changing table in my living room at the time. Like I would tilt the camera of my computer away and just always feel like I had to be the certain image, right? And that like I struggled with that a lot. I had a client who told me, or actually not a client, I'm sorry. I had a person in my extended network meet with me to talk about potentially working together, like coming on as a client. He's an entrepreneur himself, has been, in business for many years. And I remember literally him telling me that running a business was really hard and he didn't think I would make it. And that was in probably like month 1 of running my business. And I remember being crushed and then deciding I'm not going to allow him to dictate what's possible for me. And I actually came into a Facebook group. I think it's one that's been archived since, just like the one that you run, right? Saying, guys, this is what happened to me. And women rallied around me, like fellow entrepreneurs rallied around me. And even though it was a very difficult situation, it kind of fueled the fire to keep going. So I've had like all of those circumstances and many more that I can't even count happen to me. And they still do. It's not like you reach a certain point in business or you reach, I've been in business 5 years. It doesn't mean on the 5th year that everything's golden. It gets harder and harder. I had my 3rd child last year in a pandemic, dealt with some very difficult client situations as a result of that. And, that stuff, it's hard, right? It's hard. Different levels are always challenging. And while I'm a big proponent of celebrating success, and I talk about my success a ton, I also am a big proponent of being realistic and transparent about the challenges that go on. And that's why I resonate with your story, Lauren, and so much of what you have shared, because people need to hear it. We need to normalize failure. We need to normalize some of the things that come with being an entrepreneur. It doesn't mean we're walking around always expecting worst case scenario. I've been guilty of that many, many times. But I do think it's like not making this mean something negative about you. Right? Like I could have easily said, oh, I lost 3 clients in one day. I'm not destined to be an entrepreneur. And I could have packed up shop.
And a lot of people would have.
And I'm not judging them for those decisions. We all have to make those decisions, right? But I didn't, because once you plant that seed, it's like, you guys know, if you know, when you plant that seed, you can't dig that up.
Yeah.
You can't dig that up. you know? So anyway.
Choosing your hard, like that
Yeah.
was hard, but
Yeah.
for you leaving your baby was hard to go to corporate, and you
Mhm.
gotta find your spot. Well, since that gentleman told you you could not do it,
Yep.
an amazing community of your own. It's called the Market Like a Boss Facebook group, and we'll make sure everybody gets connected. We'll put it in our show notes, a link to all that for people to join, because you actually have a really cool workshop coming up that we'll tell everybody about. But let's talk about how you took these things. You went from, and by the way, solidarity on the people walking in. And now, by the way, I don't even just have kids. I have a puppy who will come and
The
like
dog was worse than the
when
kids.
I'm in the middle of the, I'm like, and I'm like yelling at Katie, like on my coaching call. I'm like,
I know. You know what though? The women I work with, like they're amazing. And
same.
guys, like nobody cares as much as you care about it. You know, it's like your kids always annoy you the most, right?
Sure.
Not anybody else. Same thing.
Yeah. And for me, like one of our core values is integrity. Like, how can I tell you that you can do this from home and be
Yep.
successful and,
Yep.
kind of not do both simultaneously all the time, but like live this harmony or balance or whatever word doesn't make you cringe if I'm not actually exemplifying it. And I exemplify it more than I would like to.
Honesty and transparency are two of my core values. So I'm right there with you. Right there with you.
It's a reality. But so you had to get over this idea of being mortified from your child walking in, which again, I can just totally relate to. I have one specific instance just like playing in my mind, to confidently showing up as you, not the corporate buttoned up version of you, but Michelle, who has built this multi six-figure business, and teaching other people to do the same. So let's talk about that, because we know from both of our student pools, like confidence isn't just something you teach. You don't just like buy a class on confidence, and it's not like, well, when I feel confident, then I'm going to show up. It's like, in my opinion, it's almost the opposite. But you teach on this a lot. So what do you think about confidence and showing up and starting to put yourself out there, whether it's in Facebook groups or on your own profiles, but just in general as a business owner? How does someone do that? And how do you know if you're doing it right or being authentic or all of those buzzwords that we hear about? What has been your experience with this? And then how do you help your students with this?
Yeah. Number one, if you're asking yourself the question, am I doing this right? You probably are doing it right, because that begs the question, right? Confidence, you're absolutely right. Confidence is not something that you can just create out of thin air and snap your fingers and you're good. Confidence has been something, and I will say, I have not always been a very confident person. Confidence is something that I've struggled with long before becoming an entrepreneur. I struggled with it as a child. I struggled with it in high school. Like there's been a lot of confidence related issues that I've had to work through. I say work through because I don't think you can ever truly like overcome and they never come back up again, right? Like that's a bit unrealistic. But for me, I had to just, the impact of what I wanted to make, right? And the people I wanted to serve had to become more important than how I felt on a given day. And that can be challenging. I'm not always so successful at like shifting that, right? But for me, it was less about like feeling ready, because I knew I never would. If I waited till I felt ready, I would still be back at my dining room table with my husband at our old house, deciding whether or not we were financially able to have me go out on my own and start my business. Right? Like, so for me, it was, having to just take that leap of faith because I believed in the bigger vision and I wanted the bigger vision, right? So again, using the example of starting the business, because I know that that's one that you all can relate to. You start your business not because you're like, I feel so confident and ready to become a business owner, right? Like I feel so confident and ready to adjust our finances and take for us, it was a financial hit in the short term, right? I had to just look at, well, what do I really want for my life? And am I willing to like wait on this? And I wasn't. And so for me, confidence has always come from taking action. And the reason I'm able to take that action is because I have to force myself to step outside of what I'm feeling and focus on, well, what do I ultimately want? And do I want it enough to get uncomfortable? I'm uncomfortable every single day of my business, even now, especially now as I work toward 7 figures. That's my big goal. And so I'm uncomfortable all the time, but I'm uncomfortable and I'm willing to be uncomfortable because I care about what I'm building, because I care about the people that I'm serving, because I care about my clients, because I care about my team, the team that I'm growing. So I would just say for all of you who are waiting for ready or waiting to have this confidence comes with taking action. It comes with falling down, but getting back up. And you are all more than capable of that, or you wouldn't have started your business. You've done something that so few people, Lauren and I were saying this before we got on, like so few people are willing to do. Right? There are so many people who have the dream of becoming an entrepreneur and they will never take action. They will never actually step out and do it. And so I think that that's just really important to not be striving for confidence when it comes to getting visible. I also always say that there's a difference between consistency, like you guys have all heard people say, like show up consistently, right? Get visible consistently. But I think for a lot of people, they think it means constantly. There's a difference between consistency and constantly. In fact, if you are online constantly, you're probably burning yourself out because you're going around looking like, what do I need to do to show up? And you're putting all this pressure on yourself. Consistency is the goal, right? The definition of constantly is always. That's not what we're talking about here. When you can be consistent, it's you committing to showing up regularly. If that's one day a week where you start doing a live every single week, even though you're scared, cool, commit with that. Like start with that. I always started smaller and started with the frequency that like whatever season of life I was in allowed me to do. And I've grown since then. Like people will say to me, you do all these lives in your Facebook group. Like, how did you, like, as if I just like kind of woke up and started doing lives. I'm like, I started with like one live a month. I was scared to death doing it. My first one, I like also didn't know the ratio of like, you know, where my head should be in the camera. So it was all forehead, right? In that first live, I'd be happy to share the link. It's on my page with anybody who wants to see that first live. And I was so stiff and like, you could tell, I didn't know what I was doing and I was scared, but I did it anyway. And I got a little bit of confidence after that first live, not a ton, but a little bit. And each time I did it. And nobody watched live. They all watched the replay, but you know what? I didn't care because I showed up anyway. And so for me, it was always about committing to like just some sort of regular action, even if it was less than I wanted to do, because if you commit to doing regular action, instead of holding yourself to this ridiculous standard of showing up all the time, you're much more likely to follow through on it. And that's what people need. People need consistency from you. They don't need constantly.
It also comes back because that's actually where confidence comes from.
Exactly.
You just mentioned like the follow through, like you say you're going to do a thing and then you do that thing. And it's not about it being perfect or right or whatever, but it's like you did the thing and that actually is what breeds confidence. And so it's fascinating to me, you know, to both have now lived through it, but also to like have helped walk so many people through it and then get the validation of talking to other business owners like you, Michelle. It's like, we all want confidence before we start, but confidence is actually earned through setting the intention and then following through. And what you're really doing in your brain is you're saying like, when I decide I'm going to do something, I'm the kind of person who shows up and does it.
I can be trusted to do it.
I can trust myself. We could go so much deeper there, but I want to make sure we talk about ideal clients. So Michelle and I were chatting, you guys, she's an amazing marketing expert. Again, she's got this great Facebook group. We'll tell you how to join it. But a big part of both what she works with her clients on and a need that she has witnessed inside the Free Mama Movement Facebook group as being an active participant is sometimes we don't even know how to start showing up because we don't really know who we're talking to. And I know that I see this all the time. And so we want to talk about ideal clients. Now, Michelle, I would love for you to start, like, let's 101 this for a second. How would you define an ideal client? Like, what are we talking about here? How do you define ideal client? And then let's go straight into our practical tips. I would love to hear like 3 takeaways for the person who's listening right now. They're like, I want to show up, but like, I'm second guessing myself because I don't really have a lot of clarity in why I'm showing up. And I think if they address this, it'll help solve that problem for them.
I totally agree. So ideal client, I like to term it as dream client, but same thing, target audience. Like there's a lot of, you know, they're all, let's just say for the sake of 101, they're all together. Okay. Ideal client is not just like the person that you would love to work with. Cause I think sometimes you don't have that clarity right off the bat, right? Like that's a very realistic, like valid thing. For you, it's going to be the person who can benefit the most from your services. So, you know, if you're like, let's say a copywriter and you're somebody who, you know, can really help entrepreneurs like totally revamp their copy, maybe the person who's the best fit and can get the most out, you know, of your services isn't the person who's just showing up and doesn't know. Like they know who their ideal client is. They've been showing up, they've got an offer that's selling, and they need to fine tune their copy to make it sell even faster. Like that would be a definition of an ideal client, somebody who can have the greatest benefit from what you offer. And I think that a lot of women struggle with this because part of what made us want to be an entrepreneur is we want to help people and we want to help everybody. Okay. And so I will say that when you are brand new to business, there are some things that you need that you can do, and I'll share them with you in a second to kind of better figure out like who this ideal client is. But please know that you will get to a point in your business, if you haven't already gotten there, where everybody doesn't cut it anymore. You do need to start simplifying and niching down. And I think people like hate that term because it scares them. But we're not talking about like turning away anybody who doesn't fit that niche. We're talking about, I am prioritizing my message to reach this person, knowing that the online space is big. There's no way I can reach everyone. Not everyone sees all my content, and that's okay. If somebody else happens to come along because they're attracted to my message, I get to decide if I want to work with them. That's the benefit. I think we need to be really clear about that, because a lot of people, I think, resist the choosing an ideal client because they think that they're giving up something. You're actually giving up something now by trying to target everybody. You're giving up that particular person, right? And the more specific you are, and I have seen this firsthand in my business and with my clients, the more specific you are about your message, like this is who I'm targeting, and you're not even afraid to say it, like you actually say it in your marketing, there will be people from the peripheral who come in who don't even fit all of that, who are like, I fit some of it. Can I still, like, people are attracted to specific messages because there's so much noise online. And I don't say that to discourage you guys. It's just a reality, right? So the more specific you can be, the better. Now, it may take you a little bit of time to like narrow it down. I say it's like peeling back the layers of an onion, and you will never know everything there is to know about your ideal client. You just won't. You'll always be in the process of learning because people are always evolving. But I think it's important to know that you do have to start somewhere, because unless you're selling toilet paper and water bottles, and even then, you probably have a particular audience, right? Everybody is not your person. And when we try to market to everybody, our messages aren't landing really with anybody. And that's when I think women start to feel discouraged, and they say, well, something's wrong with me. Something's wrong with my offer. Something's wrong. And then they go down the rabbit hole of trying to change everything. When in reality, if they were just a little more specific and added some context to who they want to target, they wouldn't really have to change anything else, at least not right that minute.
So good. Okay. So do you want to walk us through?
Yes, I do. So,
okay.
Yeah. So for those of you who are like, okay, I don't know who my ideal client is. I'm not even sure like who I should pick. I don't want to pick the wrong audience. And by the way, if you pick an ideal client and you decide you want to change it, you get to change it. Remember trusting yourself. Remember that the whole trust piece we just mentioned, it's your business. You get to make that change. I don't want you guys thinking that by choosing an ideal client, you have to work with them forever. That is not the case. And my ideal client has evolved as I've been in business. Okay. But for those of you who are like, where do I even start? You got to get out and have conversations with people. And I'm going to tell you 3 ways that you can do that right now. But you've got to get out and start talking to people, because if you are kind of like hiding behind the scenes, waiting to figure out who this ideal client is, but you're not sure who they are, one of the best ways you can figure that out is by talking to different people about your offer and what you do. Because what you'll notice is certain groups of people will be more interested than others. And you can start to see some patterns and trends emerge. So the first thing I want you to do, okay, is I want you to actually, and this is something that I think a lot of people either overlook or they get sort of scared about doing, but it's actually something I did that taught me a lot about who I wanted my ideal client to be, because this led to one of my very first big clients. It's not groundbreaking, but it's simple but effective. Tell people in your extended referral network, like family, friends, etc., what you are up to. How many of you have been in business, but you haven't really told anybody what you're up to, right? Or you haven't shared it, on your profile or put out a post. Early on, I put out a post on my profile, literally saying, guys, this is what I've been up to. My website just launched. If you know of anybody who's looking, like, I didn't have a specific ideal client. I just wanted to get the experience and be talking to people. Well, I actually landed one of my biggest clients at the time, and that client taught me a ton about who I wanted to work with, because there were elements of that client that I loved working with, and there were other elements that I didn't love. And I got so much clearer just from that one client. So starting with your referral network, if you haven't already, can be really, really helpful, because you'll probably get some really solid leads and some warmer leads, meaning they know somebody in your network. So it's a little different, right, than somebody who's brand new and cold. But you're also going to start getting experience of talking to people about what you do and hearing from them. What do they need? What support are they saying they need, right? If you can really listen to what people are telling you, you'll start to identify, again, those patterns of, these are the types of people who need what I have to offer. So that's the first step, okay? The second step is to show up in groups like this one, like Lauren's group, right? I've heard people say to me before, like, I don't know if my ideal clients are on Facebook groups. They probably are, guys. There are like over 1.8 billion people who participate in some Facebook group, right? Probably more. There's a lot, like if Facebook groups are the best place to start because they give you access to a lot of people, right? They give you access to people that you can talk to about your offer, but they also give you access to conversations. So even if you're not actively talking about your offer in Facebook groups, which you should, okay? But even if you're not doing that, are you listening to the conversations that are happening? Even just coming up with a list of keywords that tie back to your area of expertise and type them into the Facebook group search bar and look at what conversations are coming up. What questions are people asking? Who's asking those questions? That tells you an awful lot, again, about the person who's attracted to your offer, who needs what you have to offer now. So spending time in Facebook groups, listening, if commenting on posts that tie back to what you do and having those active conversations with people, that's the best place to start. I know everybody says, like, how do you show up? Showing up is this vague term. That's how, by asking people questions and by telling them about your offer and doing it in a way that like just doing it in a human way, I guess is the best way to say it. However you would show up, in person, in the real world, guys, show up here too. It doesn't have to be different. I think people like have their real world personality and then they have their online personality. Like the two should be one and the same. And so just being able to listen, like for me, showing up in Facebook groups in the first, I was really active in the first like year and a half of my business. Not only did I get clients from there, but I also started identifying like, oh, these people are talking a lot about marketing, or these people are talking a lot about this. Huh, interesting. Like, I wonder if there's something there. I reached out to people to do market research. If you don't know who your ideal client is, if you don't know the people who need what you have to offer, go ask them. Facebook groups are a gold mine. And I know that you have to pay attention to like different promo rules and, guidelines that the groups have in place, but even just being willing to like say, hey, listen, I have a couple of questions. Like, can I send you a DM, or can I like asking them right there in the group? Most of the time that's fine, right? As long as you're doing it with good intentions and you're doing it in an authentic way. So I think like asking and not being afraid to ask is really important. Successful business owners ask a lot of questions. They do market research. They talk to different groups of people so that they can get a sense of who needs what they have to offer. If you've already served clients, you can even just look at the current clients or past clients that you've served and say, well, what did I like best about working with so-and-so? What did I like least about working with so-and-so? And that's going to start to give you some good criteria too. But if you haven't served any clients, just getting out there, talking to people, even taking some clients on, you will take some crappy clients on when you first start booking clients. Like, I'm just going to say it. It's the truth. But those clients that aren't so great, they teach you a ton, probably more about who your ideal client is than the ones who are perfect. So just remember that. Like, don't be afraid to get that experience. I worked with a lot of different types of clients when I was first starting out. So that's the second thing, is groups. And then the third thing would be making a list, and you can do this even if you haven't served a client, but making a list of complementary partners, meaning what people, like if you're a copywriter, right? I'm using that example because it was the first that popped in my head, but if you're a copywriter, what types of other providers or other experts would your client be going to, right? So if you're writing copy, maybe they'll be going to a website designer. That's an example of a complementary partner, somebody who offers something similar that your people would be taking advantage of, but it's not in direct competition with you. Even just making a list of who those people are and doing a post in a group like this one saying, hey, I'm looking to meet more of you guys. Like, where are you, right? And they raise their hands and you jump on coffee chats and you start having conversations with them. You get to ask other experts, hey, where are you finding clients? Like, who are you connected to, right? And you get to start to like dive a little bit deeper into their business and get some really cool ideas from them. Not because you're going to run out and copy them, but if they are somebody who again offers a service that is very complementary to yours, that goes hand in hand, that's a great place to start, because they probably have some intel about, who they've been attracting and what's been working well for them. So there's many more things that I could tell you, but I think those are like 3 sort of down and dirty tips for people who either have never served a client or are still early on and kind of figuring that out and figuring out that process. Again, if you have existing data of people that you've worked with, that's always the best place to start. But if you don't, get comfortable asking people. And the only way to get comfortable is to start doing it and have a goal in mind, right? Like, what gap do I want to fill this week? What knowledge do I need this week to get one step closer to identifying who my ideal client is? And how can I figure that out? How can I answer that question?
So good. Some of this should have sounded familiar from one fellow internet marketing loving human being who has a Facebook group to another. So good. So like everybody go back and re-listen because there's lots of value in there. And you actually have something for everybody listening. You have your 5 steps to get clients like a boss. So once we've nailed down this ideal client, we're out there, we're networking, we're referraling, and we will put that in the show notes. Anything else you want to say about that though? Who needs this?
Yeah, I would say pretty much like any like coach, strategist, consultant, service provider, like this 5 steps to get clients like a boss guide is going to help you in the process of identifying your ideal client, but it's also going to help you make sure that you are putting out messaging and copy that will attract the right people. So I would say, again, for those of you who maybe are starting to serve some clients, this would be a good guide for you. If you're not, go back to the 3 things I just said. But I think everybody can benefit, again, from the tips that are in the guide. Some of them are similar to what I've chatted about here, but some of them are different too, in terms of expanding on, okay, what do you do next, right? Like, how do you actually go out and get them? What does that look like? So highly recommend that if you're even thinking about it, like just grab the guide. Just grab it.
That's awesome.
And I also share a lot of great tips in my Facebook group too, which I know Lauren mentioned.
Yes, no, we definitely will put the link for everybody to join. It's called the Market Like a Boss Facebook group. We'll add that to freemamaradio.com. You guys can go check that out. I have one last question for you, Michelle, and I think you already know this as a member of our Facebook group, but the mission of the Free Mama is to make sure no mother has to choose between family and financial stability. Knowing that, your story, everything you shared with us today, is there one last piece of advice that you think that the moms listening right now need to know about their journey or getting started?
Yeah, you're going to fall down. You're going to fall down. But you know what? You get to decide whether you're going to get back up. And so this financial stability, financial freedom, and freedoms in other areas that we talk about, that is something that you're going to have to choose every single day. You're going to have to choose that freedom. It's not something that's handed to you. It's something that you have to take. And you alone are in control of whether your business is successful. It doesn't depend on, you having the best message or the perfect website or, the best graphics, right? Like I spent a lot of time in the beginning of my business consumed like in Canva. I was in Canva a lot, consumed by how perfect my messaging was. And I realized like there is no perfect message. There is no perfect website. There's no perfect anything. You are the one that determines your success. And once I really started leaning into that, that's where I began building the trust in myself that we talked about. And so remember, like whatever you're facing, I'm not saying it's not going to be hard, but you are in control of whether you get back up and you learn from it. That's true success. True success is you falling down and getting back up and learning from it versus you avoiding falling down altogether. Because if you're doing that, you're probably playing too small.
That was so good. Like there's our audio clip for the episode. That was amazing. Yes, that's a mic. Yeah. Mic drop. That's a wrap. That was so amazing. You guys, please go hang out with my friend Michelle in her Market Like a Boss Facebook group. She's got a website coming up here a workshop coming, the other W word for us. A workshop coming up called all about how to figure out your ideal client. So if you want to go deeper, if you want to work with Michelle on her team to identify that, you can find those details inside of her Facebook group as well. Michelle, thank you so much for being here with us today. You guys, if you enjoyed this, share it. We're on my page instead of in the group to give you guys the ability to share this out. Get our mission. Michelle has a very similar mission serving her clients as well. Help us help more people by sharing this if you liked it. You can screenshot it, share it on Instagram. I know that I will reshare it. I'm sure Michelle will as well if you guys liked it. And send us your feedback, leave a review, comment, become friends with us. Like we show up to serve you guys. So you got to let us know when it's working and if something resonates with you so that we can keep doing more of it. But Michelle, thank you again so much for your time. I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your day. Go do these things, show up, become more confident, get that clarity, get those clients. Like it's all here for the taking. And just remember, you will fall down. But again, like Michelle said, you get to decide if you get back up, which is just get back up because we're here for you to lean on. Love it. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you, Lauren.
Bye, guys.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Free Mama Radio. Don't forget to check out Free Mama TV right here on YouTube for hundreds of how-to videos and interviews to help you start, grow, and scale a virtual business from home. If you want to join a community of tens of thousands of moms just like you, make sure you join the Free Mama Movement group over on Facebook. And lastly, if you want to learn more about how we can do this together, work to achieve your goals, and make you our next success story, check out my free training at thefreemamamovement.com. I'll see you next time.